The film begins on a night when chaos erupts, causing the police to enter a building and slowly approach their target. Suddenly, an imposing robot appears with a countdown monitor on its chest, connected to multiple gas tanks. The chief of police warns his colleagues to evacuate the area just as the room explodes. Elsewhere, AJ is being interrogated by a man named Ferris about his involvement in a crime. The interrogator opens a file containing information about Yaya, while AJ watches his life flash before his eyes. A few weeks earlier, he attended an engineering class where his best friend Reika whispered something about her car modification project. Upon hearing them, Professor Faris asks Yaya to answer a question on the blackboard. Despite being shy, she approaches the board and solves the problem with a new formula that the professor had never taught. AJ offers to teach the formula to the professor, but the man leaves the class offended. While the boy walks down the hallway, he accidentally bumps into a man holding tea. When the man becomes angry and intimidates him, Reika comes to his rescue. Unfortunately, Mariam, the one who is in love with Yaya, witnesses his cowardice and betrayal. At home, Yaya's father comforts him and says that he would like to take a walk. After leaving the house, Nasser arrives on a motorcycle and demands to know where Sama is. Sel replies that he had already sent his maid Sama to her parents' house for safety because he knew Nasser was involved in illegal activities. Salah's words infuriate Nasser, and before leaving, he asks if it was he who called the police, to which Nasser answers yes, further increasing the man's resentment towards the elder. After Nasser departs, father and son head to the cabin where Jejeje recalls all his hobbies and inventions. There the man asks his son the name of his older brother, who was born dead, and he answers Musa. At the sound of the name, Yaya presents his miniature robot with the same name and explains that he has developed Musa and that he can control it remotely using a virtual reality device. While Yaya places a device on his head, he explains that the gadget will connect to his spinal nerve through his temporal lobe, and that, by means of his thoughts, he is able to control the robot. He then demonstrates by having the robot easily crush a stone. Sale applauds proudly as Yaya calls at the door, worried about him. He merely responds with a slight smile before leaving, disheartened. Mariam apologizes and leaves, asking him to stay for a while. He then asks if she wants his son. She does not answer, but she insists that she is not his friend because she pities him. He then recounts how he met Yaya when he borrowed spectacular items for a piano class, and although he tried to return them, no one knew who he was, which made him realize that the boy had no friends. During the interrogation, Ferris asks how Saleh died, something that Yaya denies happened weeks earlier. While the boy was cleaning the windows, Saleh says that Mariam feels something for him. However, the man believes otherwise. To cheer his son up, the elder recounts how he courted his wife, eliciting a smile from Yaya. The elder then asks Yaya to prepare some tea while he puts on some music. As the kettle is on the fire, he hears a car outside and looks out the door. There he sees Nasser and two other men exiting the vehicle and entering the house. The thugs attack Sal while Yaya timidly watches from the kitchen door. Nasser and his men steal money and other valuables before setting the whole house on fire. As they leave, Yaya sees his father, mortally wounded and engulfed in flames in the living room. Later, Yaya sits in front of his house, now reduced to ashes by the fire, and watches as doctors load his lifeless father into an ambulance. Shortly after, Mariam visits Yaya and tries to comfort him. He says that he will sell his house because he only needs the cabin. The next day, the protagonist heads to the police station to report Nasser. However, the lack of evidence causes the authorities to question his statement. During the interrogation, Ferris cruelly comments, suggesting that Yaya should have died with his father in the fire and that he did not do so out of cowardice. That night, the boy is left staring at the money obtained from selling the house and feeling guilty for not having saved his father. This guilt leads him to pour a large amount of alcohol on himself, even though he is holding a lit match, and he stops just before setting himself on fire. At that moment, the figure of his father appears, asking him to come to his death and change the world. Next, he positions his robot in front of the door and controls it to open the lock. Upon seeing Musa, he realizes the incredible power it possesses and feels inspired to work on building and programming a life-size Musa. During his last visit to the police station, with the intention of mocking Yaya without knowing that the boy has plans for him, EJ hides in a room and activates Musa using his virtual reality headset. The robot rolls out from underneath his parked car outside the building and easily eliminates Nasser's henchmen one by one in the exterior. Nasser hears loud noises coming from inside, and then the imposing robot, twice his height, appears. When Nasser flees, the robot hurls a wooden beam to knock him down. Musa then places the man into the car and seals the door. The robot flips the car and ruptures the gas tank, causing the vehicle to explode. As it turns, AJ sees an innocent man filming the events with his phone. Despite the possibility of exposing himself to the authorities, the robot allows the man to leave, and he immediately uploads the video to the internet. Elsewhere, Ferris takes his son Joseph to the doctor, who unfortunately informs him that Joseph's illness is worsening and that he needs an operation in Germany costing 200,000 euros, a sum Ferris cannot afford. The doctor suggests an experimental procedure, but Ferris refuses to risk his son's life with an inexperienced surgeon. During the conversation, the man receives a phone call that forces him to leave the clinic. Meanwhile, on a rainy night, AJ receives a message from an internet user claiming to know that he built Musa after hacking his computer. Elsewhere, Ferris attends a meeting about the robot incident where he is assigned, along with Zacharias, to investigate the case. Later, a group of multimillionaires gathers to discuss how to acquire the robot in order to benefit economically. They plan to infiltrate a police officer's body with a spy to obtain information. At the same time, Reika visits Yaya and shows him an illustration of Musa, implying that she knows his secret. In a serious tone, the woman assures him that she won't tell anyone. Afterwards, she takes Yaya to her house and shows him a car they can use to transport Musa. They then talk about Yaya's motivation to avenge his father as well as all the people wronged in the world. Reika supports his actions and reveals that she has a friend on the dark web who provided her with a list of people who should be arrested for selling illegal substances, weapons, and orphans for organ trafficking. The next day, the two friends drive to a warehouse and liberate Musa from transportation. At that moment, armed men, hearing a loud noise coming from outside, suddenly open fire on the robot when Musa bursts through a wall, prompting the men to shoot at the robot. EJ immediately gets to work and takes out the criminals, who quickly realize that their rifles are not slowing Musa down. Unfortunately, the robot is damaged by a higher caliber machine gun, and just then, we see Yaya feeling pain amid the chaos. The leaking gas can explode beside the robot and hurls it to the other side of the room. Musa then dodges a rocket-propelled grenade despite the pain and damage, and EJ continues controlling Musa, managing to eliminate the thugs one by one, rescue the kidnapped children, and escape before the authorities arrive. Meanwhile, the police receive a call about Musa's latest feat and quickly head to the warehouse, where they find 20 criminals hanging from the ceiling. There, Ferris discovers a clue suggesting that Musa is being controlled remotely. Afterwards, Reika takes the virtual reality set and asks Yaya how he controls Musa. In response, he lights a lighter near his hand and she reacts quickly. AJ explains that his spinal reflexes made him pull his hand away from the flame and compares his response to the functioning of Musa's controls. Over the following days, the heroic vigilantes fight crime throughout the city, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of the people. Musa's growing popularity leads people to put up support posters. Meanwhile, Ferris finally invents a device to counter the vigilante robot. On a rainy day, Reika arrives with Mariam and finally reveals their secrets, presenting Musa to them. However, Mariam makes them realize that what they are doing could put their lives in danger and persuades them to continue anyway. At the same time, the authorities find a video showing a car that appears to be empty, and they suspect it might have been used to transport Musa. They trace the car's license plate to Saleh, whom they connect with Nasser. The police search Yega's cabin but find nothing suspicious. While Zakaria interrogates Farid, Saleh leaves the room and follows Humpty. Zacharias' assistant asks his helper to show him the archive room, and upon entering, he asks Handy if he is working with anyone else. The man denies the accusation, but when the professor is about to inform Zacharias, he admits that he works for Samir, Mariam's father, the multimillionaire who is trying to get Musa. That night, Ferris runs, carrying his son to the hospital. After an incident there, Ferris assures his son that he will get better. In response, his son says he is not worried because Musa will be saved. Upon hearing this, Ferris devises a plan and meets with Samir to reach an agreement in which Samir agrees to take him to Musa in exchange for money to pay for his son's treatment, which Samir immediately accepts. Shortly thereafter, the professor devises a plan for a group of men to hijack a train. During the event, a journalist records a video and uploads it to the internet to attract Musa's controller's attention. Upon seeing the news of the hijacking, the controller heads to the train. Meanwhile, Mariam is kidnapped by another group who know Yaya's weakness. The professor orders the train car to be detached, and Musa jumps into the hijacked car, unaware that the men are waiting for him. The criminals use an interference device to cut off the controller and dismantle the robot with a chainsaw. Fortunately, a passenger snatches the device, enabling connection with Musa, who then strikes the criminals. Afterwards, Musa uses his body as a bridge so that the passengers can reach the other car. Finally, the robot's body suffers severe damage and is thrown to the side of the railway tracks. After finding a DVD at the cabin, AJ and Reika play it and discover that Mariam has been kidnapped. Although Reika thinks it is a trap and AJ is worried about the girl's safety, he decides to rescue her. He then heads to Samir's mansion to inform him that Ferris has his daughter. Samir calls the professor and complains that his daughter's kidnapping was not part of the plan. After sending Ferris's full name to his friend on the dark web, EJ then plans to destroy Musa in order to highlight his importance as the only person with knowledge of the robot's blueprint, hoping to guarantee Mariam's safety. He then publishes a video in which he presents himself as the creator of Musa and reveals the robot's location, before saying goodbye to his invention and heading to Ferris's hideout to surrender. After the police enter the building, Musa explodes, and Ferris receives the news by phone. The professor mocks Yaya and asks him to write a plan to free Mariam. However, Yaya warns him that Samir will not let her escape easily unless he releases his daughter. Finally, Ferris orders his man to release the woman after realizing that the boy is right. Following a phone call in which Mariam assures he is safe, she then begins to write the plan on the wall to protect herself, covering her nose and mouth with her shirt while secretly opening an ampule. Meanwhile, Reika closes all the car's windows as a vehicle emitting thick white smoke passes by, causing the guards to faint. A group of men in a van place explosives throughout the building. The leader of the group is Yaya's mysterious friend from the dark web. Inside the building, Ferris does not realize what is happening. Meanwhile, Yaya continues writing the formula, but the professor notices something is wrong and flees, and AJ hastily erases what was written on the wall. Unfortunately, he cannot leave the building because men are blocking the exit. He then calls Reika and tells her to leave, but before doing so, he confesses his true feelings for Mariam, something he had never been able to do before. Finally, the explosives detonate and the walls collapse on the protagonist. At the same time, Ferris finds himself trapped at a police checkpoint and realizes he will be caught anyway, so he resigns himself to his fate. He then calls the doctor and finally agrees to the experimental procedure, caressing his son's head while watching Zacharias walk toward his car. After a while, Yaya's friend enters the building and finds the boy alive under the rubble, assuring him that people like them do not die easily, and helps him out from under the debris to escape the building. Meanwhile, a mysterious man walks through the crime scene and finds Musa's central computer intact on the ground.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.